Can you hear us?
I could probably, guess maybe at the end of the meeting, see if we can go through and take that public comment too, see if it'll about. So, just I guess she probably hears us, so we'll go ahead and get back into that at the end of the meeting. Before we adjourn, any other public comment? Okay, I'm gonna close public comment for now and get into tonight's public hearing. We have one item. It's files KA 25-02 and KCU 25-02. The Montana Department of Transportation has submitted applications for annexation, initial zoning of P1 public, and a conditional use permit for the construction of a combination facility located at 2905 Highway 93 North. The facility would include an approximately 28,400 square foot new building combining equipment storage, mechanics, and welding shops under one roof. MDT would continue to store salt and other materials for maintenance at the location. Staff report.
So thank you. As mentioned, the Montana Department of Transportation submitted applications for annexation, initial zoning of P1 public, and a conditional use permit for the expansion of an existing facility located at 2905 Highway 93 North. The facility would include an approximately 28,400 square foot new building combining equipment storage, mechanics, and welding shops under one roof. MDT would continue, as you mentioned, to store salt, sand, and other materials for maintenance at the location. In terms of its basic location, it's just right off the intersection with Rose Crossing coming east-west with Highway 93. There is a traffic signal at that intersection. Surrounding properties include the Ford dealership to the south, the Armory to the east. You've got Northern Pines Golf Course across the highway and the new Stillwater Bend development to the southwest. Utilities, there's water and sewer adjacent on multiple sides of the property that they would have access to. This is a shot of the site looking from the north. Current zoning is SAG 10 in the county, proposed as City P1 public. The Kalispell Growth Policy Future Land Use Map designates the subject property as urban mixed use. The proposed P1 public zone is intended to be utilized in any land use designation and thus would be supported by the growth policy. The property is located inside the city's annexation boundary. The Highway 93 North Area Plan, which is incorporated into the growth policy, states that access should be coordinated so as to allow only collector or arterial streets to intersect with the highway. The judicious use of right-in, right-out approaches, frontage roads, and good internal development street design should be the rule to reduce or eliminate the need for direct access onto major gateway roads. The conditional use permit addresses an extension of Quail Lane from Rose Crossing to the north end of the site. This extension, in addition to reducing direct access to the highway for this facility, would allow for the continuation of a north-south road running parallel to the highway connecting Rose Crossing to Eagle Valley Drive. That connection helps establish a better network of roads off the highway, funneling traffic to major intersections and preserving traffic flow on the highway. Without annexation, the road connection is unlikely to be available. In terms of that road connection, it's coming right through here, and you can see the Quail Lane extension off of Eagle Valley Ranch Drive to the north. But that connection would then, with future development, complete that center portion, and that would give the full connection from Rose Crossing up to Eagle Valley. As I mentioned, the requested CUP would allow the MDT combination facility with the new building, combining this equipment storage, mechanics, and welding shops. Mechanics and welders currently at the 5th Avenue East-North facility would be relocated to the new site. MDT would continue to store salt, sand, and other materials on this southern portion of the property. In terms of the general site layout, there's water lines in that private access along the north property. It's possible that there may need to be main extensions for hydrants, fire hydrants, depending upon the fire review. Sewer is also available to the north of the property. Stormwater facilities would be managed and constructed per the City of Kalispell standards for design and construction. In terms of the overall site, you can also see where they would have multiple access points onto the extension of Quail Lane, as well as the existing private roadway. On site, the building would be sited in the middle with parking along the two sides, as well as landscape buffering on the external portions of the property. As part of the proposal, access would be changed with the extension of Quail Lane, which would be a dedicated public street, preferably built to a local standard. I didn't want to bring out, it's not reflected in the report, but there was a concern from attorneys from MDT that state law may not allow a dedication of that roadway. And in lieu of that, a public road and utility easement would be granted to the city. And so we'll be looking for an amended condition 3, hopefully as part of the recommendation coming from the Planning Commission. The extension of Quail Lane would be a 60-foot right-of-way with the sidewalk, landscape boulevard, and streetlights on the west side, and curb gutter on both sides. Additional improvements on the east side of Quail Lane would occur when further development occurs on the east side of that new street. The proposal includes a 50-foot wide access from Quail Lane onto the site, which would be addressed through engineering review as a potential deviation from standard conditions. With the new connection to Rose Crossing, the access from the private roadway to the north side of the property should be restricted onto the highway. The applicant has proposed reconfiguring the approach to restrict traffic from turning southbound, and the reconfiguration should be included as a condition. The specific design would be subject to review and approval by both the city and MDT. Due to the property's location along the highway, the zoning ordinance applies entrance corridor standards. On Highway 93 north of Reserve, there's a 100-foot buffer requirement. The regulation allows the buffer to be reduced so that it does not encompass more than 10% of the property. In this case, the width is reduced to 59 feet. The buffer area is, in most cases, comprised of landscaping and pedestrian and bike trails, but can also include, quote, frontage roads intended to limit the number of access approaches onto the highway, unquote. This proposal provides the Quail Lane extension along the east property boundary that aligns with the road network in the area, accomplishing a primary purpose for the frontage road provision. In addition, the proposal includes a 10-foot wide asphalt path along the highway frontage, along with an approximately 30-foot wide landscape buffer. The provisions in the proposal satisfy the entrance corridor requirements. The property also currently has a screening fence along the perimeter of the site. The existing screening or the equivalent should be maintained in order to appropriately screen the facility from neighboring properties and the traveling public, including along the Quail Lane extension. Any fencing should be installed in accordance with the zoning regulation standards. This is just an elevation drawing showing what the building would look like. And with that, staff would recommend that the Kalispell City Planning Commission adopt staff report KA 2502 and KCU 2502 as findings of fact, and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the property be annexed, that the zoning for the property be City P1 public, and that the conditional use permit be approved subject to 9 listed conditions, and be happy to answer any questions.
What did you say that the attorneys might be worried about with the road thing?
That there's a provision under state law that might not allow a dedication of that, so they might not be allowed to give the property to the city. And in lieu of that, they were looking at doing an easement. So typically with most developments, you would see that land or a roadway developed and then dedicated or given to the city, but it just might not be possible under state law in this situation. And as far as the development, it doesn't really change anything. It's just the designation of who actually owns the dirt underneath. There would still be a city easement as the fallback provision for that.
Question?
Yeah, I just had a question on why are we requiring screening?
Well, they've got an existing screening fence that's there. They included it in their proposal, and that's typically something that you look at when you've got an industrial type of use that's adjacent to major roadways.
But they're gonna have to move the fence and then rescreen it on the west side, right?
They may, but it was also included within their site plan. They were planning on doing that in any case. But Yes, I mean, typically for this type of facility, you'd see some measure of screening that would be there. And in this case, they proposed it with the fence as opposed to a landscape berm or something along those lines. But that's typically what you would see would be some kind of buffering element.
I know the property owners in the vicinity to the south and the east, the multifamily, there was some concerns with the just the industrial, the armory and such, and just finding a way to soften that up a bit. So
But it's gonna be a beautiful building, right? Anyway, if it's included, it just seems that we're gonna have a nice landscape buffer and then a fence behind it. But
I don't think that they're looking at in terms of berming or anything. There's not necessarily enough land there to do that. And so you have some of the landscaping there, but you wouldn't necessarily have anything breaking up the straight visual shot into the facility. And again, that's what's up there with their current facility, and that was part of the site plan that they submitted.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna open this up for public comment. If there's any public comment, step to the mic and your name and address.
Good evening. My name's Justin Juliffs. I'm the Department of Transportation Maintenance Chief, work out at the Kalispell office here. Just going to provide a little bit of context on what the intent of this project is and be willing to answer any questions operationally. Did I get everything right? As far as my, okay, good. Rory's comment about my shirt threw me off. So I was saying, anytime your wife buys you a shirt, you wear it. I've come to realize that in the last 27 years. So with that said, great job. A lot of great detail there. Just want to talk a little bit about why we're doing this, or why we're proposing to do this. So it's really on the efficiency side and the level of service side. So from an efficiency standpoint, the game plan is going to be to take the heavy operation, relocate it from the existing facility where we're on about roughly 3 acres, relocate that north of town where we have almost 3 times that size, almost 9 acres. With the buffer and the city road through there, it narrows that up a little bit, but it really does enhance the circulation and the operation as far as access goes, on and off of Highway 93 as well as Rose Crossing. So that in itself will allow us to be more responsive and provide a more consistent and higher level of service to our customers. From an efficiency standpoint, our current facility, essentially our equipment, we've just outgrown it over the years. So for an example, we started adding tow plows to our equipment fleet almost 10 years ago now, but currently we don't have a place that we can get those tow plows inside. So they are parked outside during the winter, which causes some concern as far as doing pre-operational safety checks on those, and then they're freezing up, and there's just more time before and after the shift, maintaining and checking those pieces of equipment out. This new facility has drive-through capability, so we would be able to keep everything undercover, which adds to more timely and thorough pre-trip and post-trip inspections, and then also allows our staff to work on that in a more well-equipped facility. Let me see. In addition to that, we would be relocating roughly 20 permanent staff. So we have 8 that make up our equipment shop right now, and then we have a crew of 12 that make up the maintenance side of the house. So all of those individuals will be going in one facility with a common area in the middle that would be a shared area. So instead of having independent facilities that each of them are in now, it creates an opportunity, one, for team building, and then two, we're able to get everybody under one roof, which in itself enhances efficiency. And then the long play would be to relocate our admin staff that are currently leasing a facility locally here and bring those folks into the existing facility where the shop and the maintenance facility is after that remodel is determined and configured. So again, it gets more of the admin folks that do similar work in one location and moves the heavy lift out of town in one location. So with that, I would take any questions.
Did you want to clarify where the existing facility is you're talking about over here? It's Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. I appreciate that. So, so currently, we're working right behind Wendy's. And, so we kind of border what used to be the blue and white on one side, and then what used to be the railroad tracks and is now the Highline Trail. Yeah, Parkline Trail. Thank you. Getting my trails mixed up. So the circulation and the access is very challenging when you're talking any heavy equipment, especially the tow plows or our transport trucks are really limited on the turning movements in and out of that current facility. Thanks for the question.
More to, I guess, Rory's question is the screening fence, is that going to be a fence that's going to be covered, or is it going to be like a brick wall? I just don't quite understand that part.
Sure, great question. So I would envision similar to what's currently there, chain link fence with the slats in between that. And really I think that's good for two reasons. One, it does, shield the view from the operation, which is also good from a security standpoint. So we'd certainly support that.
So build a pretty building that's hidden.
You're welcome to come and check it out.
Is it more on the security side of it that you're looking at that, or more on just the shielding from view part of it?
Well, we wanted it to fit the current environment. So when Rose Crossing connection was put through, part of that effort, we changed some access around, and then also part of that effort was along the Rose Crossing leg on just adjacent to MDT's property. There was also some landscaping, some vines that were planted along that, just from an aesthetic standpoint.
I'll introduce myself, and I might be able to answer that.
Sure.
Thanks, Justin. So I'm Ryan Mitchell with Robert Pesh and Associates, 102 Cooperative Way. I guess my thought was, because the conditional use is really for that southern half of the lot, where we're gonna continue the salt sand storage and kind of those, that we would continue these fence screening along that area. So kind of along the east and west side, south half, and along Rose Crossing. I guess I'd envision, since we were building a new building, we're doing landscaping, the rest of it would just be normal chain link fencing for them for security. They're gonna have a lot of equipment in there and they don't want people going in there. So maybe that clarifies it, but I guess that was my thought, is the north half of the lot doesn't need the CUP. It's kind of the operations on the south half. So I kind of thought it was that. Or does the whole thing need a CUP?
The whole thing requires a CUP, and that's
Oh,
what the
okay.
CUP is all drafted around that, so.
Okay, so that was my thought anyways, because it is gonna be a very nice building. We aren't looking at any landscape mounds, we're actually doing some bioretention in those green areas. So there'll be depressions to collect storm water and do some of that, so just for clarification on that.
Any other public comment? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and look to the commission for a motion on, I guess we'll start with the KA 2502.
I recommend that the Kalispell City Planning Commission adopt staff report KA 25-02 as findings of fact. Recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the property be annexed and the zoning for the property be P1 public.
Second.
Motion seconded. Any discussion on the annexation?
Pretty straightforward.
Roll call.
Joshua Borgart,
Yes.
Doug Kaufman,
Yes.
Shelby Lekron,
Yes.
Pip Burke,
Yes.
Rory Young,
Aye.
Chad Graham.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Get a motion for KCU 2502.
I move that the Kalispell City Planning Commission adopt KCU 25-02 as findings of fact and recommend to the city council for approval of the conditional use permit for the construction of a combination facility located at 2905 93 US Highway North.
Do we need to make an amendment to that third?
Wait, once
Item
it get,
one.
yeah, once we
Okay.
get it on.
Once it gets on the floor.
I'll
I already
second
forgot
that.
what the amendment was.
I'll second
Okay, it's seconded. Any discussion or get the amended condition?
Yeah, what was the condition?
I guess it was
About the
item number
easement?
3 needs to be amended so that what, it doesn't get dedicated, it becomes an easement, did you say, or what was
Yeah.
that, sorry?
I have some wording that I
Okay,
can
perfect.
propose.
That'd be great.
If you want. So I would move that the Kalispell Planning Commission amend condition number 3 on staff report KCU-25-02 by adding the following. In the event that state law prohibits dedication, a public road and utility easement shall be granted to the city.
Second.
Discussion on the amendment?
That just makes the road available, right? That's what that means?
We're just kind of covering it.
Yeah.
Roll call?
So just the roll call is on the
Yeah, on the amendment.
On the amendment. Yep.
Yep.
Pip Burke,
Aye.
Joshua Borgart,
Yes.
Shelby Lekron,
Yes.
Rory Young,
Aye.
Doug Kaufman,
Yes,
Chad Graham.
Aye. Okay, amendment passes, and we're back to the main motion. Discussion on the main motion. I think what I like about it is the relocation of the activities from downtown Kalispell
Yeah.
out to the outside of town. I think that's a really good thing. You know, about the fence, I mean, I'm not gonna go through and tell anybody, it's for security purposes and stuff like that. I get that. I'm thinking about this fence, but you're gonna have big piles. Does it really shield the piles from view? You know, I guess it depends on how close you are to the fence, but I get that. I guess the fence. If they want to put a fence up.
Can I make a quick clarification, just
Yeah.
so it's on the record? So the intent will be that that landscape buffer actually goes all the way to the south. It's not just, I think the way we're looking at that map is because that's primarily development area, but the CUP is for the entire thing, so it'd be like the road. So the landscape buffer would go all the way to the south. It would include landscaping and all
So
that.
it'll
that-
soften the look.
It'll
of having a
soften the look.
fence.
It's more if fencing does go up, yeah, we don't want to prohibit them from being able to secure the facility and such, but the fence may, in order to meet the landscape buffer, actually need to be moved in a bit, so we would have to look at that as the site plan comes to final rendition at the building permit process, but I just wanted to make that
Okay.
clarification.
That
That,
helps.
yeah, we wouldn't necessarily require it, but the south end is right up against Rose Crossing is probably the area that you would have the most visual impact, especially given the landscape buffer would be on the west side. But if they chose to screen it,
Well, on the opposite side is just a golf course, so it's not blocking anybody's view of anything, especially once the building goes up. So I don't think that's necessarily a concern. It's not an unattractive piece of property either, where it's already at.
Yeah, I like the extension of Quail Lane because it will allow for future connectivity. I guess it's not a hill that I'm willing to die on, but I'm not wild about having screening around a brand new building. I think just the fence, I just think of Quail Lane becoming a city street and the one side of it is all just screened. I can understand screening the yard. I don't think we need to screen the parking in the buildings, but again, it's not the only thing is that the condition that's in there requires that the existing fencing or screening or the equivalent shall be maintained,
I
so.
don't think they're gonna be screening the part where the building is. It's
But I
just gonna
don't
be
think
a fence.
that condition allows for that. So.
I would agree. That condition would probably be amended to really only encompass the south half where the storage is happening. I don't think we would disagree that the building and the area that's actually highlighted there I don't think that would need to be screened either.
Yeah.
But to clarify, yeah, it would, where the storage of the sands and stuff, it's all gonna be on the south end, and I think their intent is that they would only wanna be screening that area anyways. We don't think the entire facility needs to be screened around the building, so I would agree if the condition needs to be amended to clarify that, then we should probably do that.
I mean, no one likes free parking.
Do you want to change that, Rory, then, the amendment?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, if it doesn't make any difference to the owners and staff support that, then, I'll have to dream up some more words.
Go for it.
I guess the question would be if they wanna screen it, do you have an
Do
issue?
you want to screen the parking?
Or around the building?
Why don't we ask?
Why don't you ask you guys, because it's part of the thing that I fear is that it's a completely enclosed space right next to such a beautiful place with all these good businesses. And in my brain, I'm not a builder. I don't see, it's a nice building to hide, that's all.
Yeah, your point's well taken, and a lot like Rory, MDT really can go either way.
Okay.
So whatever we need to do to create that level of flexibility, the screening is more maintenance. It's sometimes it can be a little more burdensome with high winds. So
So, just a question for staff, as opposed to amending the motion, can we allow it to be a decision for architectural review? I mean, just because if we take out the screening now and heaven forbid that the building isn't beautiful, that's the thing is, and I know we've got some renderings in here, but we don't have
both ways,
finishes or
right?
anything on that. I would prefer it open just because I know what MDT buildings look like and I think it's appropriate. It's set back from the highway. It's big, it's open, but rather than encumbering the planning and entitlements of the parcel, maybe it could just be something that architectural review look at.
You could tie it to that, and there's a few different directions that you could go, because there's two distinct halves to the site. I think that southern half has got, it's gonna be piles of materials and equipment and stuff, and it probably is something that you want to screen on there. The northern half isn't quite the same. I would say a lot of the reason the condition was in there is because their site plan shows maintaining that existing fencing going up around there, so it was just mirroring what was there. Screening is less important up there. If you could say all of the fencing would be, if required by architecture review, or requiring fencing and buffering in just the southern half. There's a lot of different directions you could go with that.
So I've got a super ignorant question. I just want to make sure I understand it because I don't know anything about this. If we look at a distribution site for electricity, there's a security concern for not only the employees, but there's a security concern because the equipment is expensive, right? There's that level of want and need, where there's not a home office there, it's just a substation, et cetera, et cetera. In this particular case, is it a concern that you have people just randomly parking in the parking lot and roaming the lands and like looking at all this stuff, where at least a fenced-in thing is secure, where you have an ID check? Like, is that your concern, or is that something that we're perceiving as a possibility?
I appreciate the question. I believe the concern in this case is really going to be during non-business hours.
Yeah.
During business hours, during activity, we just don't have those safety and
Checks.
and security concerns. So I would imagine that this would be similar.
So technically, there is a concern for wrapping up the entire business due to security concerns of, I mean, not trying to be silly, but I've had people park in my own driveway that were from Iowa because they thought it was a place to park, right? My point is that are those the concerns that you have from people just randomly parking in the middle of nowhere and taking pictures, or the response time of police stations, those kinds of things with that kind of stuff?
So during regular business hours, we don't have those concerns. We're open for business, although this is primarily just an operational facility, and it's not intended to be as public interfacing. Now, with that said, the perimeter fencing, some type of perimeter fencing is important to the operation.
Okay.
Because as you said, we've got lots of equipment, lots of materials there that we need to secure, and has also been part of prior legislative audits that require us to secure those facilities.
Perfect. There we go. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay.
Would screening, when you use the word screening, because it says fencing / screening, would the screening aspect of it be the part that's pointing to the slats in the? Okay, so
I think that maybe a more appropriate would be, if any screening fencing is constructed, shall be reviewed and approved by the Architectural Review Committee. It leaves it open unless the planning commission just doesn't want it. But I know even their facility over here is fenced. I mean, our city facilities are fenced.
Fenced,
So
everything.
I
would
feel
say
like
do
that
the
the building, they're
screening
probably going to
around
want to
the-
secure the
do the
building
screening
as
around
well.
the storage area, and then the fencing can go around the building
Is that appropriate?
where at least it would be open.
Yeah.
Be kind of flowing, unless you're wanting it to be closed off. But I don't think that's what I'm hearing. I think you just don't want people getting into it.
Yeah, just not during non-business hours. We want to be able to secure the perimeter.
Right.
They've got expensive toys that people will like to play with at night. So just for discussion on the board before we make any movement, if we were to amend condition 6, the final sentence says any fencing shall be installed in accordance with the zoning regulation standards. If we were to add, and any screening should be reviewed and approved by architectural review.
You can add that. I would say that because it takes a building permit, it's going in front of architectural review anyway. So fencing would be part of what they would look at just for the building permit. So,
I know, but the way it's written at the moment, it has to be screened all the way around.
yeah.
So that to
Yeah,
me
you can
gives
certainly
them,
clarify that with something else, but ARC would be looking at it one way or the other, I guess was my point, so. But if you'd like to add the clarifying language, you certainly can.
do you want us to clarify that the north half does not have to be screened, or are you,
However, you guys, it's
Probably
your
could just do that
recommendation on
right
what
after,
you want to do with
At
it.
the end, just say the north half is just open fencing.
Or is up
I guess
for-
part of it is I don't want to
Yeah,
put
limit
an
it.
instruction in the condition that will cause, I think it's,
You know,
It's really not
again,
our
part of the
place to
reason it
tell
was
them
in
what
there
they
is
do.
that
Yeah.
that southern half is basically what's up there right now, where it's material storage, and that's what they do right now, is they've got fence with slats in it that provide screening and security. And so really it's kind of reflecting what's there and what they've proposed. And I think the only real difference is whether or not you would have a condition that would apply that in the northern portion of the property. So it wasn't a condition that the applicant opposed at all when they reviewed it, so.
Yeah, but there may be a better way to do it.
Yes, and
And there may be a
if
preferable way
there's-
to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would move that the planning commission amend condition number 6 by adding to the final sentence, or by amending the final sentence that states any fencing shall be installed in accordance with the zoning regulation standards, and locations for screening shall be approved or reviewed and approved by an architectural review committee.
Second.
I don't have a problem with it. I don't know why we don't just do it here. But I don't have a problem with them doing it either. So
The only reason that I'm trying not to put a condition in here, because I have to deal with these things at the end,
Yeah,
and
other
37 of them becomes a major thorn in your side. And so just to have it so that the applicant has the ability to decide if they want to screen it and it meets architectural review requirements, then
okay.
I feel like we've done what we need to do. I think that Quail Lane with a new security fence, I don't disagree with shielding the yard, but the new open area that's paved, it's going to look no different than driving through Kalispell Rail Park. We don't have a fence there. We don't screen that. So anyway, that's my.
All right.
I agree.
Roll call.
Shelby Lekron,
Aye.
Pip Burke,
Aye.
Doug Kaufman,
Yes.
Joshua Borgart,
Yes.
Rory Young,
All right.
Chad Graham.
Aye. Amendment passes. Back to the main motion. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Rory Young,
All right.
Doug Kaufman,
Yes.
Joshua Borgart,
Yes.
Pip Burke, Shelby Lekron,
Aye.
Chad Graham.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Then I'll go ahead and close tonight's public hearing and move into old business.
Okay, so last month we had the Renaissance Senior Care conditional use permit that moved forward to city council and was approved last night. And that was the only item that we had moving forward to council from the last meeting.
New business.
Don't adjourn. You were going to go
Yeah.
back to hear the public.
New business.
And as far as new business, we don't have any applications for any public hearings next month, but we do have Anderson Ranch. If you recall, last year we did the Gardner Anderson Ranch PUD on the south end of town. That's where the new Amazon facility was going down there. The Anderson Ranch side was the residential side to the east. And so they further developed their plans, and we're getting annexation, PUD, and preliminary plat along with that. So we'll be doing a work session on that next month.
Okay.
And we'd also be continuing our series on the land use plan and doing a work session on that as well.
Are we able to get back to public comment? They're off? Okay. All right. After I adjourn the meeting, we're going to be moving into continuing work sessions on the Montana Land Use Planning Act, Senate Bill 382. So stick around for that for a good time. We're adjourned.
I've said something like free pizza and
Pizza.
Doritos to like the best dressed or something.
Definitely.
That's how they get people to the
Forgot
chess. This is two of mine.
Yeah. You ready?
A giant and then a mini.
I was like, wait a second, my brain doesn't.
We're gonna start.
We're gonna wait.
Oh,
We're
where?
gonna wait for Shelby. Come on.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well,
Well, just,
Yeah, we're
Just-
sharing
but look-
photos of. We're just sharing photos.
I turn off my.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and move into tonight's work session on the Montana Land Use Planning Act, Senate Bill 382, just continuation of work sessions on this item, so. Forge ahead.
Good evening and thank you, Planning Commission. Donnie McBath, Planner 2. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what we've actually been getting down and dirty with. So we have the Kalispell Land Use Plan update. In May 2023, Montana Legislative passed Senate Bill 382 establishing MALUPA. MALUPA mandates that 10 cities, including Kalispell, adopt a new land use plan to replace existing growth policies and update zoning and subdivision regulations by May 2026. Objectives of the land use plan update. We need to identify opportunities for development in areas such as housing, businesses, agriculture, public lands and institutions. Address impacts on adjacent properties, the community, natural environment, public services, and potential natural hazards. Establish future land use boundaries within Kalispell's jurisdictional area. And our engagement summary of March. So this is what we've done from now to last month. 2 open houses, 4 drop-in sessions, online questionnaires. We've had participation with 60 plus in-persons, 110 plus online responses. And with that, with our participation, we also met with a bunch of groups. I believe we're about 12 or 13 different groups right now, encompassing everywhere from local senior centers to the county, for example. We wanted in our summary, our community values was one of our top when they filled out these questionnaires: access to nature, small town feel, peace and quiet. And then they were asked what their challenges were: corporate vacation rentals, school funding, property taxes. So what were the best qualities about Kalispell? The access to parks, trails, the open space, the distinctive downtown, the sense of community, and the locally owned businesses. But what were the greatest challenges? Need for a bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. We were developing too quickly and we need solutions for sprawl. Need for funding for public facilities like schools and libraries, and the cost of living. So when we met and had these 2 open houses, we needed to identify what the top attainable housing strategies were. The top was apartments as permitted use in office and commercial zones, higher density housing near public transit, places of employment or the college, and tiny houses defined as in the building code. Tied for 4th, second home on any property where single family residence is allowed. Apartments with 5+ units anywhere that 3 and 4 unit apartments are permitted uses. And tied for 5th, single room occupancy projects where an individual rents a single bedroom with at least a shared kitchen and bedroom, and an increase in building heights by at least 25%.
Sorry, Donnie, those rankings came from the online responses and from talking to people?
Yes, sir.
Public input?
Yep, this is all public input.
This was 110 people.
At least. Yeah, that was up to date about a week ago, so we're continually getting more and more responses. So it's actually been very productive.
And when did they allow themselves to be able to, when did you allow them to get to the interwebs?
Yeah, so on February 21st, the website was created, and then it went live about a week later, or about a few days later, it went live. So it was accessible right before March.
You recall we had the presentation last month, yeah, so it basically started right then. So we're only about a month into it. We actually have surveys even more than that going back to last summer when we were at the fair and stuff. And these are not housing strategies we picked, they're out of state law. And it was like, well, here's what we have to do. Community kind of ranked them, and so that we can start to utilize that as we develop the plan.
And then that goes into the community engagement plan. So what Logan Simpson came up with, this idea, was the IAP2 framework for informing to empowering. And you ask, what is an IAP2 framework? The IP2 spectrum of public participation is a tool that helps guide how organizations engage with the public in decision making. It defines 5 levels of public participation, each with increasing impact on decision. The 5 levels of IAP2 spectrum are: 1, inform. There's a goal, provide the public with a balanced and objective information. And then what's the promise? We will keep you informed. 2, consult. Give feedback on analysis, alternatives, and decisions. What's the promise? We will listen and consider your feedback. 3, involve. Work directly with the public throughout the process. And we promise we will work with you to ensure concerns are understood. 4, collaborate. Partner with the public in each aspect of decision making. And our promise is we will seek your advice and incorporate your input. 5, empower. Place final decision making in the hands of the public. We will implement what you decide. With that, there's our tools. We have our website, engagekalispell.com, social media, flyers, interactive maps. So this is all available on the website. You can go on the website, tag the map, put your input, and then as you see over in the right-hand corner, there's places where they can comment. So there's a bunch of comments in there, and we're getting feedback in that direction as well. For our staff, it's the city and Logan Simpson teaming up on this together to accomplish this. And then the Planning Commission work sessions monthly. So this is all the community engagement so far up to date that we've been doing. Oops. Our project timeline and phases. Foundation, establish objectives and communication channels, identify necessary updates to comply with state statutes. Inspiration and discovery, gather community perceptions, identify key assets, and envision potential futures. Innovation and creation, synthesize ideas into a draft plan, incorporating community feedback. Public meetings, regular planning commission meetings are held on every second Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. These meetings are open to the public and serve as platforms for discussing the land use plan updates. Our next steps is our plan is in July to have a celebration in 2025 to celebrate our plan and get the public's response on this. And our timeline goes back from last year, but with Logan Simpson, really started March and then now until July 2025.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
After, hearing this, is anybody going to act surprised when in like 2026 or whatever, when this stuff starts happening, people start showing up and asking, why is this happening? Why is that happening? You never told me. I appreciate all this work. I just don't think this is stuff the general public consumes. You're going to get a lot of the people that go through that pay more attention that are going to go and participate in this stuff, right? We got to figure out how to get it to the mass people to go through and understand what is happening with their land use. This isn't a criticism by any means to anybody. I just want it to be effective and work, because too many times I've sat behind this dais and had something that we've worked on for 6 months, and then come right time to vote, everybody pours in because one, very last minute stuff happens, and then they wonder why we're trying to go and push it through really quickly. So
And I completely understand what you're saying with that. But I think public outreach is certainly something we're taking really seriously with this. We're trying to.
oh,
do the
I
right
agree.
thing.
I know you are.
And it's, certainly having open meetings like this, that was one reason why, we hired Logan Simpson to help with the website and to do some of those outreach, events that we had, which we're going to be doing again, probably early July. We haven't nailed that down, but June or July. And it's also why we're reaching out to different stakeholder groups. So, groups from as few as one or two people, up to like the chamber presentation that we did that was about 120. So, we've done.
And please don't misinterpret
No,
what
no,
I'm saying. I am
understand.
in no way going through and disparaging any work that anybody has done on this. I just know the public.
No, I
There-
understand, but I was just explaining there's a lot of things that we're doing besides just having the work sessions here where we're trying to reach out to different groups. The school districts, we've got a meeting coming up with Logan Health to talk about what they've got with a lot of the different, the Flathead County, road superintendent and landfill people. We've got, actually just set up a meeting for probably about 25 to 50 seniors out of a senior advocacy group that were interested in what was going on with that. So we're trying to make those connections as many different places as we can, and we're doing a couple of those a week. So there's different levels of what we're trying to do to get out to as many people as we can.
To answer your question, I think I mentioned in months, the planning paradigm is shifting, and I don't think the public is truly going to grasp it for a couple cycles of this.
Sure, okay.
So I think that's why your role's maybe even more important now than it, could be in the future. And I would perceive, we're on because of state law, a very short timeline for such a comprehensive plan. So I think in the future, as we discuss updates, I think the community gets much more involved when it's maybe a little more honed in. So like when we work on neighborhood plans, like the core area plan or the downtown plan, or it could be any component. So maybe if we get through this process and get the plan adopted, it is essentially something that we'll be reviewing all the time, and maybe chapter by chapter we can get the public more involved, whether it's natural environment or public services, and really get segments of the community that are interested in things and really start honing on all those things. I mean, they should be involved now, but in the future, if we could spend, maybe a month on a chapter, it would be, I think you'll get a lot better input and feedback in the end.
I know it's the
like-
second time I've interrupted based off of this stuff and everything, and it's just something that but thank you for indulging me of that, but.
I totally get it.
Yeah, and also I think to note is we are anticipating, we're trying to go to the fair. We're trying to put ourselves in places that a lot of people are going to be there during the summertime, so we can engage with them. Because the only way we're going to do this is to eat this elephant piece by piece. And to tackle this is we know that the community engagement is the most important aspect to this 382. So for us, it's have Logan Simpson full charge, bullhead at this, why we go every single avenue we can to really get the public engaged and be present and be a face out there. So I'll continue here. So our next steps to call action is we need to continue with community engagement through additional questionnaires and events, develop and present draft plans for the public review and feedback. Our call to action, encourage ongoing participation from residents and stakeholders to ensure the plan reflects the community vision. And our community participation, residents are encouraged to attend City Council and Planning Commission meetings to stay informed and provide input to the land use plan. Meeting agendas, videos, accessible online for those unable to attend in person. And the public comments. Citizens can submit written testimony or comments to the City Council via public comment at kalispell.com, ensuring their voices are heard in the planning process. So we'll take some more questions, and thank you for having us.
You could have waited like 1 minute, it would have been done, it just wouldn't.
I'd have forgotten. Questions? comments.
I just think of all the public processes that I've been involved in on planning board and planning commission, this is by far the biggest outreach that I've seen. And so I wouldn't say that there is nothing more that we can do, but I think we've done a lot more in this than hopefully than what is required by state law. And in some ways, we're not the creators of this problem. We're just dealing with it.
Totally.
But I think that
I want the public out there to understand how important this is. That's what you're doing. That is what you're doing. But from a perspective of, us up here and from the city council perspective of what this means for changes in our community when it comes to the land use planning, it's a big deal. And people are just they're living their lives out there. They don't wake up and be like, hey, I gotta go and email the planning board about XYZ or something like that. It's when they have the problems, that's when they come and they contact us. So you know what? Maybe we got a train heading right at us, and it's just gonna, at some point in the next couple of years, it's just gonna go through, and we're gonna have to fill our way through it. But I don't know.
I know that sometimes I can be a little undermining, and I don't want to be that. It's a good point. There's a lot of effort that's there. But I think there's a symbological thing that I just observed, and I just want to make everybody grasp it a little bit. For me, anyways, is the bullet point you had, I think was slide 4, where there was something about, actually it would have been, if that's the case, go forward more. That's 4, 1, 2. Oh, no, that was the first one, so keep going the other direction. One more. There we go. The next step, this symbol, is actually kind of.
Josh, your mic.
Oh. The symbol itself is quite a comical one, the next step, because there are certain cultural implications with that particular sociological thing that goes on.
So when you create, it's a celebration.
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
I'm aware. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get at is, I'm aware that there's a scenario. The key is that the scenario of the month of July means fireworks, right? So I think that a little bit of creativity to get involved with that communication, maybe a fireworks show. On the other side of the fence, the big fear that I have as somebody who tries to, no offense, defend the city and the public from themselves, and to be honest with you, usually against each other sometimes, is the relationship. There are certain things that their rights have been taken away, in my view. That's my personal view. And it's one of those things where I just wish that if we have a chance to let them know that these are going to be the clear steps from now on, that these are the changes. And I know that there's some legal questions about having to do that, but it's one of those moments where it's going to be a moment, like you said, a year down the road. What happens when somebody says they passed that? How dare they? But somehow creating a communicative way or method that says, hey, by the way, this is actually what we're having to deal with right now. And people are going to go, what? I'm not trying to say I want to fight the system, but at least make them aware so it's not just a blanket boring situation. That's all.
Do you think the radio would be a good place?
And this is the thing, radio is a great thing, all these things, but I feel like if people were to realize that oftentimes statistically it's going to be too late for them to be able to defend themselves, in my view, because this system is so, in my view, flawed. Obviously, it is what it is, but the point is explain to them why we're doing this in a way that is so clear that they'd be like, oh yeah, we're not sending you letters anymore. What? We're not sending you letters anymore? Well, why is that? And then having some ability to communicate those things. I don't know if you can do that on the radio, right? But if you can speak between the lines, that would be very helpful. And I don't know legally if we can do that, because I know that that's the big concern, because if somebody fights a law, then the city can get sued. I don't know. It's a bit upsetting to me, and I think that's also what, I don't know, I assume Chad has to feel about that process, because he knows in 2 years or a year, people are not going to care about this, and then they're going to be like, hey, who's building what?
Right. And just something to mention with that too is that I think that one of the points that people have most of the problems with this new bill isn't necessarily the land use plan itself. It's not that much different than what we've done before, but it's on the other end where there's a project that comes through and you don't
Correct.
have that public forum for reviewing, subdivisions or site-specific projects.
Yeah.
Two things. One is that the statute really emphasizes that people need to be aware that that's what that statutory scheme is. And so we've kind of tried to highlight that at, any time we've had that opportunity to make those presentations. The second aspect is because of that Maid lawsuit out of Bozeman.
Correct.
We don't know what the end result of that's going to be going to this, presumably the Supreme Court. I haven't heard that that's been put forward, but I do think that the legislature is looking at making some potential changes to that, which may introduce some form of public notice as part of that. Maybe. It's in the legislative cycle. That's something that's very possible that could come out of that. So it's something to keep an eye on over the next month as legislature's in session there. Could potentially attach something like that to the 382 cleanup bill where they were smoothing out some of the rough spots in there anyway. So we'll see what happens. And I think that if they do make some changes there, that might go a long way to alleviating some of the concerns that I know all of you have up there, and I know that the city council has expressed too.
Anything else?
So one last thing real quick,
Okay.
just to kind of lay out what we're looking at doing over the next several months. We're kind of targeting August to have the, have a final draft available for a public hearing and hopefully a recommendation that we would move forward from this body onto city council. And as we're laying that out, we'll be doing a work session in May. What we're looking at doing there is kind of really focusing on the housing section. As we've talked about, that's really one of the big differences between the existing growth policy and the new one is much more of a focus on housing projections. So we wanted to take a good chunk of time and really look at that. As we get into June and July, we wanted to work through some of the specific sections before we have the final draft that's out there for everyone. In trying to meet that schedule, there's a good chance that we may have a fourth Tuesday meeting that's just a work session to focus on the land use plan. May, June, and July. We'll see how we progress through this, but just kind of wanted to get it out there. That's a good chance we may have just a couple extra meetings through there. Tried to avoid that up to this point, but getting it across the finish line may necessitate that. So, and then the other thing to mention, I think it kind of came up earlier, is we do have Logan Simpson coming back again right now, hopefully early July, and doing some more outreach where we do some more open houses, pop-ups. These last ones we did at Sykes for breakfast. We did at Bias during bingo night. Just trying to get out as many places we do, and we probably mix it up a little bit. When they come through again, we've also got a booth lined up at Thursday Fest, doing that a couple times. And even though we'll be moving on to council, we've got a fair booth too to try to do some of that outreach. So anyway, just kind of wanted to kind of lay out kind of what some of our plans are in broad terms for some of that engagement.
Maybe do a planning and zoning trivia night. See how many people show up.
Are you going to MC us? Okay.
Dad, you would be the MC and you would just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right.
Winner, Chad.
Yeah, it'd look like this.
Be the worst fundraiser.
The worst
right.
fundraiser ever.
You good?
I'll
Yep.
go.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and close the work session.
All right, thanks. Oh, did you do public, were you going to do public comments?
Yeah. Public comment.
Not just here in some other capacity. capacity, I'm really here just to talk about this part, I guess.
About what?
Just about this, just to talk about the, Jaden Whipple, live in West Kalispell. Thank you for being here on Tuesday night. Other stuff to do, I'm sure. I just wanted to speak since it is a part of the planning process to take public comment at these meetings. I want to say that by and large, I think that my views more or less reflect most of the survey results, and that I would like to see those reflected in a draft plan that gets put in front of you guys and then eventually, ideally, in front of the city council. That I like that it reflects a lot of the things that have maybe had more of their due diligence in previous planning documents, like the 2035 plan, land use plan. I see a lot of that. A lot of those things that are reflected as either top priorities, bicycle or pedestrian paths, like in our core and our downtown plan. I think that those things pair very nicely with some of the results that we just saw in the survey earlier. And so I'm excited to see those continue to move forward. And yeah, just to say that as you guys consider moving forward with this plan, depending on how litigation ends up coming down with MAID, ideally maybe there'll be a little bit more public comment added back into the process if that's the case. But while we still are going through the process of doing the public comment, I would just like to say that I'd love to see, looks kind of like there was a description of a mixed use zoning so far as, having apartments available where commercial business is able to be conducted. Ideally, we would be able to prioritize that in our, core, our downtown planning areas, and then along, areas of the city that have had infrastructure to perhaps accommodate that kind of slightly more dense urban fabric. So maybe along the Parkline Trail, maybe less so along places like Silverbrook or Tronstad. As we go and kind of pursue those projects, I think it's important to look at something like Tronstad, where we might have had a slightly more dense development. Looks like it'll be a little bit more dispersed now as it progresses, but identifying that if those are the types of developments that you want, that we make sure that or at least I would like to see Kalispell grow in a way that kind of branches out from its core, and to see that apartments and townhouses kind of appear more so on the east side and around our core and downtown versus eating up a little bit more farmland to our north, east, west, and south. And yeah, that's all I'd say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment?
I have a question. So, I know, I'm sorry. I couldn't get out earlier. I was trying to figure out how to word it. So, with going
That's not a question.
I know. With going forward with this use plan, what we're talking about, is it actually there won't be any more public comment after this passes and everything? Is that what I understood?
On site specific projects,
So maybe
right?
part of what we should be doing is being like, hey, remember the Tronstad development? We had 300 people here every night? We should put a banner out saying, if you don't want that to happen again.
But I did say that at that meeting.
I know you did. I was there.
But that then becomes that legal question.
Kind of one of the nuances of what you're
Right.
looking at here. So what it says is you wouldn't have it for site-specific development.
Right.
So what it's saying is for subdivisions and for conditional use permits, where you're looking at one development happening on a specific site. You wouldn't have that. You'd have an administrative review, not a public review. You would still have reviews of establishing the regulations. So if it's a zoning text, like amendment, whether it's a specific.
But that's why I said it was
amendment or-
site specific
People don't even know
development.
what this.
Right, but it would
what
also
you're
be
saying.
annexations, zone changes, any of that sort of stuff would still come forward. There would still be some things that would be coming forward the way that we're used to. The big difference basically really is subdivisions and CUPs.
But that's where the public cares, is when it's site specific. Isn't that the point?
I know, and I would say that there's a lot of people that would share that view, but the legislature passed statutes saying
A
that
lot
10
of
cities in the
people,
state
I
have
don't
to
know
do
of
this.
one person that wouldn't want it. But that being said, that's all I gotta say.
Should put
That's
up
part
a
of where the
neon
city's
pink
at, is, I
sign.
mean, it's specific in state law that there's 10 cities that have to do this. And Kalispell is one of those 10 cities that has to do that. So it's trying to navigate that landscape is part of that, but
Yeah.
We're gonna have a lot of pissed off people here, bud. A lot.
Bingo.
I quit now.
Okay, I'm closing the work session.